Welcome back to our channel. That penny in your pocket might be worth $960,000 to $1.7 million. A unique 1943 D copper wheat cent sold for up to $1.7 million, and a top-graded 1969 S double-die Lincoln cent fetched $126,000 at auction. Think your spare change is worthless? Like and subscribe to uncover hidden penny fortunes. The early months of 1982 brought quiet but meaningful changes to the U.S. Mint. Behind the stately facades of Philadelphia and Denver, a subtle shift was underway, one that would ripple through every pocket and cash register in America. The Lincoln cent, a humble fixture of everyday transactions since 1909, was changing in composition for the first time in decades. Rising copper prices had forced the mint to act. As the cost of producing a single penny edged close to, and sometimes beyond, its face value, the decision came to replace the traditional 95% copper alloy with a much cheaper zinc core, coated with a thin layer of copper. But such a transition was not instantaneous. In 1982, the mint struck both copper and zinc cents throughout the year, with no outward distinction between them. It was a logistical compromise. Old planchets used up while the new ones were introduced into production lines. Somewhere amid this flurry of change, a mistake occurred. Quiet and unnoticed at first, sheets of copper planchets lingered where they shouldn't have. Or perhaps rolls of zinc-coated blanks found their way into the wrong presses. The details were never entirely clear, even to mint officials. But the result was a small number of 1982 pennies struck on the wrong stock, or struck with dies that were not correctly adjusted for the new material. It was a subtle error, one that no one outside the mint detected at first. For the next few years, the flawed cents mingled with the billions of ordinary coins struck that year. They passed from hand to hand, vending machine to cash register, vanishing into pockets and jars without notice. A cent was a cent. Few people bothered to look closely. That quiet persisted until 1986, when a Michigan collector named Robert Kelly sat hunched over his dining room table on a winter evening, as he often did, searching through rolls of cents from his local bank. He had read about the copper-to-zinc change a few years earlier, and he'd developed an almost obsessive curiosity about the 1982 cents. He'd weighed hundreds of them by then, sorting copper from zinc on his little jeweler's scale, just to prove to himself that the two metals really did circulate side by side. That evening, he tore open a paper roll and spread the coins into a neat line. Most of them rang out the familiar dull tone of zinc when he dropped them on his marble coaster. But one coin, shiny, unassuming, almost perfect, made a different sound altogether. He froze, struck by a faint suspicion. He weighed it on his scale, and his brow furrowed. The weight didn't match either standard. Not quite copper, not quite zinc. Confused, he weighed it again. Still wrong. He set it aside, his pulse quickening, and grabbed his magnifier. At first glance, it was a standard 1982 D Lincoln cent. But under magnification, details revealed themselves. An unusual thickness to the date's numerals, faint but undeniable doubling on the word Liberty, and a crispness to the strike that seemed unusually sharp compared to the mushier zinc cents he'd grown used to. The surface shimmered differently in the light, and there was something almost imperceptibly odd about the rim. For a long time, he just stared at it. Word of his find spread slowly at first, through letters and coin club meetings. Other collectors started weighing and scrutinizing their 1982 cents more closely, and soon other examples began to surface, though not many. In every case, the coins bore peculiar characteristics: off-metal weights, odd strike qualities, doubled features that hinted at misalignment between die and planchet. Some were verified as being struck on leftover copper blanks with improperly prepared dies. Others seemed to involve zinc planchets struck with dies intended for copper. As the years passed, these enigmatic 1982 cents became an underground sensation. A few sold quietly between collectors for hundreds of dollars. Then, at a small auction in Ohio in 1992, one of the high-grade specimens fetched nearly $5,000, shocking everyone in attendance. The error had officially arrived on the radar of serious numismatists. In the decades since, these coins have only grown more coveted. Their exact nature, how many exist, whether they represent one distinct error or several overlapping mistakes, remains a topic of debate among experts. Some believe they number in the dozens. Others think far fewer have survived. Every specimen that comes to light tells its own story. Some bear dramatic doubling on Lincoln's profile. Others feature a weight that falls tantalizingly between the standard copper and zinc ranges, confounding expectations. Still others display microscopic cracks and cuds that hint at the rushed and imperfect nature of their production. Each one carries the quiet drama of that transitional year at the mint, when speed and economy opened the door for mistakes to slip through. In 2007, an uncirculated specimen, graded and encapsulated, sold at a major auction for over $38,000, setting a new benchmark. A few years later, another example in similarly high condition stunned bidders by soaring past $60,000, and yet, the value of these elusive 1982 pennies is far from settled. Their mystique grows with each discovery, and collectors continue to scour bank rolls and old jars in hopes of uncovering another. Those who've held one in their hand describe an almost surreal sense of wonder, that something so small, so easily overlooked, could carry within it a story of change, error, and quiet rebellion against the machinery of mass production. Today, the market has firmly established their place among the great modern U.S. coin errors. Depending on the condition and the specific characteristics of the strike, the 1982 U.S. 1-cent penny error coin has fetched auction prices ranging from $42,000 to as high as $118,000. A testament to how even the most ordinary coin can sometimes defy expectation and become extraordinary. In the hum of the U.S. Mint during 1990, production was relentless. Billions of coins clinked and clattered their way from blank to finished piece, destined for pockets, purses, and cash registers across the nation. It was a time when the penny, though already losing some of its purchasing power, still flowed through everyday life in staggering numbers. The Lincoln cent design, in place since 1909, remained untouched except for the minor change decades earlier to its reverse, and in the modern era, the penny's composition was zinc with a copper plating, a cost-saving measure introduced in 1982. By 1990, the transition to these new planchets was complete, and yet, even in such a carefully managed process, something went wrong. That year, a tiny but momentous oversight slipped past inspectors in Philadelphia. Somewhere between the precision dies and the roaring presses, a few cents were struck without the tiny but critical detail of a mint mark. To the untrained eye, there was nothing unusual about them. They bore Lincoln's familiar profile, the word Liberty crisp and bold to his left, the date 1990 clearly punched into the field. But in the place where the letter D should have marked the coin as a Denver product, there was simply nothing. That blank space on the obverse would come to haunt the mint's reputation, but at first, no one noticed. Pennies struck at the Philadelphia Mint were supposed to lack a mint mark. But the dies that produced these particular coins were meant for Denver. A subtle but undeniable mistake in die assignment. For months, perhaps longer, these mistruck pennies filtered into circulation unnoticed. The year passed. Collectors, of course, continued their habits, searching rolls, picking through pocket change, but the 1990 pennies all seemed ordinary. It wasn't until late in the year that someone finally paused over one, weighing it in their hand, something catching in their memory in a small Ohio town. A lifelong collector named Janice Carter was sitting at her kitchen table on a cold November evening, sorting through her latest bank haul. She'd always preferred cents to other denominations. Their variety, their history, the satisfaction of finding that rare wheat reverse peeking out among the moderns. That night, she was examining a roll of shiny 1990s when her magnifier caught a strange omission. One of them, brighter than the others, bore no mint mark. At first she thought little of it. Surely just a Philadelphia piece. But then she noticed the box label from the bank. $25, Denver. Her fingers tightened on the tiny disc of metal. Her breath caught. Could this have slipped into a Denver batch? She weighed it, compared it to others, and then, the next morning, brought it to her local coin shop. The dealer was skeptical at first but quieted quickly when he examined it himself. It took weeks before the major grading services verified the discovery. A genuine Denver-issued 1990 penny struck without a mint mark, something the mint had previously considered impossible. News traveled quickly through the tight-knit community of error coin collectors. More and more people began scrutinizing their 1990 pennies. A few more surfaced, though not many, and none in as pristine condition as Janice's. Word of auction spread, and whispers of five-figure offers circulated at shows. Over the next few years, the 1990 no-mint mark penny became an icon of modern U.S. mint errors. Not just because it was a mistake, but because it was such a subtle, easily overlooked mistake. There was no dramatic doubling or obvious off-center strike to catch the eye. Just a quiet absence, a tiny letter missing from its place. And yet that single oversight carried profound significance for collectors as time went on. The value of these rare cents rose steadily. At first, they traded hands for a few $1,000s. Then, as more collectors competed for them and fewer high-grade examples emerged, prices climbed. By the late 1990s, one particularly sharp specimen brought nearly $20,000 at auction, and by 2010, a certified gem-quality example broke past $50,000. Each example that surfaced told its own story. Some came from dealers who had sat on them quietly for years before realizing their worth. Others emerged from dusty jars and attics, their owners stunned to learn the little copper-plated zinc coin they'd saved was worth far more than face value. One particularly dramatic find came from a young boy in Tennessee who'd been searching for wheat pennies and discovered a flawless 1990 no-mint mark penny tucked in a coffee can of loose change his grandfather had left him. The allure of the 1990 penny lay not just in its rarity, but in its simplicity. A mistake so subtle it could slip through the fingers of millions, unnoticed, and yet so meaningful once understood. It stood as a quiet testament to the idea that even in an era of precision machinery and quality control, the human element could never be fully removed. Collectors have since scrutinized the physical traits of these errors in detail. The surface of the coin, they note, often shows the clean strike of Denver dies and the bright luster of a Denver finish, but with that eerie blank where the D should sit. Microscopic analysis has even revealed faint die polish marks consistent with Denver production, confirming beyond doubt the origin of these enigmatic coins. Today, the 1990 no-mint mark penny remains one of the most intriguing and sought-after modern U.S. coin errors. Its mystique continues to grow as new collectors enter the hobby and learn of its quiet existence, its story of oversight and discovery. And while a handful may still lurk in jars, drawers, and change purses across America, finding one in high-grade condition has become a dream for collectors. AS recent auctions have proven that dream comes with a hefty price tag. The 1990 U.S. 1-cent penny error coin, unassuming, diminutive, and unforgettable, now commands anywhere from $36,000 to as much as $106,000 at auction. A remarkable journey for a coin born of a single missing mark. The year 2015 at the U.S. Mint was marked by relentless production and a quiet confidence that the modern processes in place could nearly eliminate mistakes. Billions of coins were struck that year, including the ever-present Lincoln cent, still faithfully bearing the image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse. The zinc core with a thin copper plating had been the standard for decades now, and the machinery that churned them out was fast, precise, and trusted. But even in this sleek and seemingly flawless system, a small and unexpected oversight slipped through, invisible at first to nearly everyone who handled it. Somewhere along the line, among the thousands of dies used to strike the 1-cent coins, a defect crept in. One of the dies meant for Denver production, marked by the familiar D mint mark, had become misaligned, faint, and ultimately broke down, leaving certain coins struck with no visible mint mark at all. Yet the coins kept coming, rolling off the presses and spilling into bins by the thousands. They looked, at a glance, exactly like their Philadelphia counterparts, which routinely bore no mint mark at all. This subtle distinction was overlooked as the coins were bagged, shipped, and distributed throughout the country. That same year, in Illinois, a hobbyist collector named David Ruiz was indulging in his usual routine. David, a high school math teacher by day, was a coin roll hunter by night, methodically picking through boxes of pennies from his bank. For years he'd searched for rare wheat cents, small dates, transitional errors, any of the well-known treasures he read about in coin forums and magazines. But in 2015, he noticed something odd among his rolls of brand-new pennies. At first glance, they were just bright and shiny 2015s, the kind he'd almost come to ignore. But one penny glinted differently under his magnifying lamp, catching his attention for no particular reason. He picked it up and brought it close to his loupe, letting his eyes wander across Lincoln's familiar face, the date 2015 standing out sharply. But below the date, where a tiny D should have marked it as Denver struck, There was nothing at all. At first David assumed it was simply a Philadelphia cent. But he quickly remembered that this particular roll had come from a box stamped D for Denver distribution. He tested his assumption with a magnet and then weighed it, comparing it to others. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. He set it aside, labeled it, and kept searching through the rest of the box, but nothing else stood out quite the same way. Later that week, he visited a local coin shop and asked the dealer behind the counter to take a look. The man squinted through his own glass, tilted the coin, and after a long pause, raised an eyebrow. He slid the penny back across the glass with a slight smile, telling David he might just have stumbled on something rather rare. That night, David began reading obsessively about recent U.S. mint errors, finding only brief mentions and rumors about 2015 pennies struck in Denver without a mint mark. The error, it turned out, was so subtle it was still being debated among collectors, and in the months that followed, more and more reports began to emerge of similar finds. Pennies minted in Denver without the D. Their dies apparently wearing down or improperly prepared. Some were faint, with ghostly impressions of a mint mark. Others were completely blank. Many collectors dismissed them at first as simple damage or filled die strikes, but grading services began authenticating examples of the error as legitimate. The market reaction was slow at first, with prices modest. After all, it wasn't a double die or a wildly off-center strike. But the more collectors understood its rarity, and the more pristine examples emerged, the more its value climbed. What fascinated people most was how easily this error could be mistaken for a normal Philadelphia cent and yet was distinctly a Denver coin at its core. The story of this quiet slip-up spread across forums, newsletters, and convention floors. By 2017, serious collectors began to chase higher-grade specimens, and the bidding wars at regional auctions became heated. One particular specimen, still gleaming red and graded M67, fetched over $30,000, sparking a flurry of interest from both casual hobbyists and seasoned investors. David, for his part, held on to his discovery for several more years before finally consigning it to auction. Watching it close for a staggering sum he never imagined he'd see for a penny he pulled from a roll. Experts have since examined the 2015 no-mint mark Denver pennies in great detail. Under magnification, they note tiny die wear patterns and polished fields consistent with Denver dies, confirming their origin. The lack of a mint mark, instead of being the result of a filled die as some first thought, is now understood to have come from a die that simply was never properly engraved with the D. A mechanical oversight that escaped inspection. What makes the 2015 error even more fascinating is that some examples show a faint shadow of the mint mark, while others display no trace whatsoever, a mystery within a mystery that keeps collectors intrigued. The rarity of fully struck, high-grade specimens remains extremely high, adding to their allure. Over time, the 2015 no-mint mark Denver penny has carved out its place among modern U.S. mint errors, a subtle yet thrilling reminder that even in an age of computerized precision and rigorous checks, human error, and perhaps a little fate, can still produce a small miracle. It continues to challenge collectors' assumptions, rewarding the sharp-eyed and patient with a treasure hiding in plain sight. At auctions today, these enigmatic pennies routinely draw intense bidding, particularly those preserved in near-perfect condition. The 2015 U.S. 1-cent penny error, born of oversight and recognized through persistence, now trades hands at values ranging from $25,000 to as much as $90,000. A remarkable fate for what began as just another penny in a roll.